Good morning, everyone. Fantastic. Good to see so many people here bright and early on our final morning. You're the hardcore crew that made it on time, so well done for that. My name's Ewan Murray. I'm the COO of the Sustainability Consortium, and as a Brit who has an obsession with terrible puns, I can't tell you how happy I was last night to be with the elephant in the room. And the more I think about it, the more I think actually the elephant in the room is the elephant in the room. And that's because at TSC, we spend an awful lot of our time down in the weeds, working on specific wording to response options, to KPIs, or worrying about the project management and buyer engagement workshops with members. And it's very easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. And so last night really for me was a reminder of why I do this job. And it's all about the elephant in the room. It's about their future and our future in a prosperous, sustainable world. And that's what I think we're all working towards. It was really inspiring to hear the team from the Smithsonian talking about the very practical work that they're doing to make sustainability a reality, and it was truly inspiring for me to hear that. I was also inspired by the entrepreneurial spirit on display last night. I think the black market for drinks tickets was doing an amazing trade, and we heard a lot yesterday about the need to really seize the commercial opportunity from sustainability, and I think last night was proof that this group can do that. So congratulations to you all, and welcome to today's sessions. I wanted to start just with a few words about what we're going to do first this morning. This first session in this room has a title, Creating Market Opportunity Through Sustainability Leadership. And we've got just over an hour to get through that. We'll start with a keynote from Laura Phillips of Walmart, and then we'll move into a panel discussion where Laura will be joined by Suzanne Lindsay-Walker from Kroger and two of our board members, Rob Anson from Henkel and Tim Carey from PepsiCo. And I've got a few questions for them about this theme, and we'll be opening it up to the floor for all of you. So I know it's early, but please do be thinking about those questions as we go through. And then we'll finish up with a quick update from Sheila on how the conclusions from the impact report have shaped what we're going to do in the agenda for the rest of today. And then we'll send you off to the workshops and sessions we have the rest of the day to get that work done. So let me start by asking you to welcome Laura Phillips back to the stage, who's going to talk us through their perspective on how to engage both buyers and suppliers in making sustainability real. So please, Laura.
I'm not Laura. Hold on.
This is a tag team. But we're going to start it off, and I'm not going to close the computer like I did last night and have kind of the blue screen of death as I do my presentation. But we're going to start this morning off with just a video to introduce you to some of the work we're doing at Walmart in sustainability, which will kind of help to set up the discussion around how we're integrating the work into the business, and then what we're doing as we look forward into the agenda. So thanks for your help.
No problem.
Who better than Walmart to stretch our energy and material dollars further than anyone ever has in the history of business?
Reducing waste, being more efficient, and doing the right things the right way will lower cost for your factories, for your businesses, and for the Walmart customer.
The company set some big goals: to be powered by 100% renewable energy, to create zero waste, to sell products that sustain people in the environment.
Part of our job is to bring along a supply chain so that everybody in the world has access
to safe, healthy food that is delivered in an increasingly transparent manner.
How you bring your products to the customers, it's not just a trend, it's something that is the wave of the future.
I also love Walmart because they're really into on their own, without having government tell them to do it, but they on their own said, we want to be green, we want to go and reduce our carbon footprint, and so that's really very admirable, and I'm very happy about that.
We wanted to bring together the scale of Walmart around sustainability, the power of technology that we're doing here, and to integrate it into our shopping experience, because that's where it really makes a difference.
We can improve people's lives. We can actually find a way to give opportunity to everyone.
Because what's good for the environment, for society, for public health, is also good for business.
They're working to empower nearly 1 million women through training who are learning to become part of the process for getting food from farm to table.
These issues represent a gateway for Walmart in becoming the most competitive and innovative company in this world.
More and more companies like Walmart are realizing that wasting less energy isn't just good for the planet, it's good for business.
We're committed to increasing our fleet efficiency by 25% in the next 3 years and doubling it in 10 years.
When I see a company like Walmart launch an initiative like this, I feel more hopeful than ever before.
So from fields, from factories, from oceans, from farms, all the way to the hands and the homes of our customers, we can rewire the system.
Great. So I hope that video gives you a little bit of the flavor of how we think about sustainability at Walmart. And I think, to me, every time I watch that video, it inspires me and reminds me why I do what I do for the company. We take it seriously. It's embedded throughout everything we do in the business, and as you can tell, we're committed from all the way to the top down to our associates who work in our stores to engage our customers around sustainability in the products that we sell and how they work with their local communities. So what I wanted to do today a little bit was talk about this subject around how are we leveraging data, really beginning to take this conversation into the supply chain, mostly where the supply chain meets our business section at Walmart. That's our buyer and that's our supplier. And if any of you have been to Bentonville, many of you have, and you've sat in our very small supplier rooms that are about half the size of this table, this is where the magic happens. This is where we find great product, we negotiate on behalf of our customers, and at the same time, we talk to our suppliers about sustainability attributes and making sure that we're delivering those products at what we like to call this notion of everyday low true cost. So I'm going to talk a couple of minutes about just kind of what are we doing and how are we doing that, and really how are we using TSC and what we call the Sustainability Index, which is the KPIs translated through our supply chain to really drive our business. I'll also talk a little bit about kind of where we're going in terms of how we're thinking about the agenda as we move forward. All right, so again, I think you'll see, we talked yesterday about this notion of green giants and what are those 6 things that the green giants have in common. Number 1 was, we have a visionary leader who's setting the tone, and I would tell you this started with Lee Scott in 2005, but our next CEOs, Mike Duke and Doug McMillan, have continued the commitment, and I would tell you really have a vision for expanding and accelerating this. It's core to the business, it's core to what we do, and it's exciting to see their commitment to the work. We talked a little bit about the 3 goals, and I think most of you are familiar with our 3 really broad aspirational goals, which really will remain as they set kind of the tone for the work for the long term. But I wanted to talk a minute today about where we're going kind of underneath those 3 goals and talk about what we see next. We're in the process of defining our goals for the next 10 years. In fact, we're really excited about the team has worked hard to deliver most of the commitments we set out to deliver came due in 2015. Many of you have goals due in 2020, so do we. But we had a great success last year in 2015, delivering a lot of our goals that we had set out. So it's time to define some new goals. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're thinking about it. So as we look at our first goal around renewable energy, it's still a big ambition. We're doing great there. We're really leaders in renewable, and we're going to continue that leadership. What we're going to add to that, continuing our focus on efficiency and expanding that efficiency, and then continuing and actually expanding our work in the supply chain. And so you'll see us talk more and more about thinking about what does that mean in really being able to achieve what we would aspire to, science-based targets throughout our supply chains. So that's how we're thinking about kind of that migration of our energy goal. As we think about waste, we really started working hard around waste in our own operations, and we have achieved amazing things. In fact, I just came back from ASDA this week. They're almost at 100% zero waste to landfill. So amazing work, and they're turning waste into energy. But what we have seen is that a need to go up in the supply chain and a need to go down in the supply chain, and a need to start to understand this notion of circular. And so we're going to work even more on upstream work around packaging. We're going to work even more on ability to recycle and reuse products at the end of life, and work with our suppliers on both ends of those spectrums, so that it's not just about our own operations reducing waste, but we can take a real approach across our supply chain in how we think about waste. We're also innovating in ideas around circular and beginning to work with partners like Ellen MacArthur on what that can look like for the future. Within our product space, we talk about products with this kind of broad range of products that are good for people and the environment. So underneath that, there's a handful of priorities I just wanted to mention today. One is you'll see us talk more and more about natural resources, and this notion that we can really be a leader, we have more responsibility here. So specifically forest, land, and water. And you'll hear us working closer with you, asking more of you in those three areas. Second is the food system. It's our largest business, it's the most complex, and it's certainly the largest environmental impact. We have more work to do here, and we'll continue to focus in this area on access, nutrition, food waste, and sustainable agriculture practices. Within the next bucket of work, we call it really about being transparent and really talking about transparency and quality products for our customers. There's a real movement to transparency, and Walmart really wants to take a lead here. So we'll work even harder on this. Also within this bucket of work is animal welfare and chemicals of concern, as well as consumer-facing strategies on transparency and quality. Finally, what we're seeing in our supply chains is social issues are even more important, and so we'll really continue to work with our partners and our responsible sourcing teams to ensure that we're providing dignity of work across our supply chains. So it's a little bit about where we are and where we're headed, and I'll be happy to take questions on that as we move forward, but you should expect to hear and see our team talking to you more about some of those issues I just discussed. So really, how do we use the tool in our supply chain? This is the tool. We can't scale sustainability across our organization, having our merchants and our buyers and our suppliers using a different set of standards for every category. We'd never do it. And so we actually funnel everything through the Sustainability Index and say, this is it. This is the tool. You have one place to go, one report. This is what you use. Our buyers and our suppliers are great at looking at metrics. Fundamentally, that's what this tool is. Again, we know the buyers are positioned to send the signal, and the suppliers are ultimately responsible for driving the results, and we manage them just like we love to do in our small supply rooms in Bentonville to improve their performance along the way. This is, in fact, a slide I took from a buyer's session that we're working with our training our buyers right now. And these are the 4 things we talk about with our buyers. We say, know the issues in your supply chain, and the tool for you to learn the issues in the supply chain is the Sustainability Consortium KPIs. We tell them to understand what it means for their category. And in fact, you'll see across the categories that we sell, as with a lot of retailers, everything is different, right? And so the issues in tomatoes actually are quite different in South America, maybe than in another region. Apparel has its own unique issues that are very different from what we see in manufacturing and hard goods, perhaps in China, or beef or dairy. So understanding a little bit more about each particular category is important. We teach our buyers about what questions to ask suppliers. And actually, we find that it's not that hard. There's a handful of questions to ask to get the conversation started. And then we work with our teams to commit to change in their categories. And we really focus on priority KPIs that they can focus on really normally about 3 things with our suppliers, and we can begin to move the agenda in those 3 things. And I would say in every product category, they're a little bit different. I would also tell you our suppliers are evaluated on what we call responsibility. Now within a global responsibility, they work on sustainability, they work on made in the USA or local sourcing, and also women's and diverse sourcing. This is an example of what we walk our buyers through and kind of how we use the TSC reporting and KPIs. So this is an apparel supply chain, and you can see all of the steps in the supply chain that we teach our team. Now I would tell you, teaching our team of buyers how to really understand these areas in the hotspot makes them better buyers. They understand more about the product supply chain, more about cost of goods. I would say they're better buyers when they come out of this training. You can see kind of the KPIs and the hotspots along the chain. And I'm going to have you look at number 3, which is greenhouse gas, and number 9, which is, where is it on here? Oh, I took it off. But those are the two, greenhouse gas emissions and emission intensity. And we'll talk to you about kind of how we teach our team to go deeper here. We call these two out to say, within the apparel area, this in fact is the largest opportunity. And we use a heat map approach as well to point this out. And in apparel, you'd see this as a big challenge for us. Greenhouse gases in that supply chain are intense. And so we talked to them about why does it make sense for their business to work on this? In fact, it's a pretty good chunk of cost. So for them to work with their suppliers on reducing energy turns out to be good for business. And then we also talk about the supply chain and about how we can really work on this with suppliers. This is another cheat sheet that McKinsey, in fact, helped us develop earlier this year. And if you kind of look at what this is, and I think this is an example, I think this is an apparel one as well. Oh, no, this is a personal care one. And so there's kind of one page that the team kind of goes in and takes to the merchant team and says, okay, on one sheet of paper, if you know nothing else, this is it. And the team has made binders for every merchant team and is in the process of kind of delivering the books, if you will, and holding the team accountable to, here's your scores, here's where you are, here's the key questions you have to ask, and here's how you're tracking. Now, you guys know your sales teams and in our world, our merchants are very competitive, right? And so it's always a great conversation to take the data and say, okay, Jimmy, listen, you have great scores, but Susie over here isn't doing as well with her suppliers. In fact, none of her suppliers have filled out the survey, and the ones who have are ranked a lot lower. So Susie, I'm not sure what you're doing, but Jimmy's really doing great, right? Guess what happens? Susie actually kind of starts to pay attention, and nobody wants to lose, right? We've got a lot of hungry type A personalities in sales and marketing, and we love it. And when we give them great metrics to drive, guess what? They actually really tend to drive them. So these are some of the things we're doing. We're giving new tools, new information, holding workshops. The team has worked hard to integrate this kind of into the tools and reporting that the suppliers use every day, which is kind of their daily dashboards. And just talking about this more and celebrating the successes of the team to really give the people on the ground doing the work kind of the incentive to continue to carry the torch. Again, why does this matter? We've seen in the categories that we work with, when we really engage the buyers, when we really work well with the suppliers deep in the supply chains to work on some of these issues, when we leverage the TSC data to make it simple, to really focus our work on our key KPIs, we can drive change. We've seen it's really good for our business. Again, lots of examples of cost reduction. We see the mitigation of risk, especially in some of our key natural resource work. And then we see great growth. And I would tell you what I've looked at is our suppliers who are our sustainability leaders, which are the ones who are performing the best in their categories. Not only are they our best suppliers in sustainability, they're just our best suppliers. They're the ones who we have the most strategic relationships with, the most JBPs with. They have the best in-stock, must-arrive-by-date fill rate, and in fact, they have the highest sales growth. So the data actually does show us that the two are correlated. They just run a better business, and that matters to us. It matters to customers, and we see great results from that. I wanted to highlight my team and thank them. I got to do the presentation today, but I would tell you it's their work, and they've done a ton of this work, and they're doing a great job. The sustainability team at Walmart is kind of organized across issues and across categories, and so they're accountable and responsible for being subject matter experts on a few issues, but they own the business relationship, and they're there to support the teams and to drive change with the teams, and they really serve a support function in the business. So with that, I have Zach, who's running our general merchandise business, and also is engaged and leads the Sam's Club. So if you have any questions, go see Zach, don't ask me. Under Zach's team, we have Ashley, who is our lead on packaging and chemicals and owns the relationship in our consumables and health and wellness teams. We have Fiona, who manages our home and seasonal and toys, and Fiona is also responsible for, broadly speaking, our integration strategy across the merchants. And I would tell you, Fiona's done a ton of the work that I just covered today and is new to our team, but just making a ton of difference. So she's doing a great job. Now, no one steal her, by the way. And Ariane is somewhere, I think. And Alicia, let me see if they're in the room. Ariane manages our apparel business and our hardlines business, and also runs our factory energy efficiency program in China. And Alicia works on our food team, and she's responsible for our proteins business and dairy, and works under Brittany for it. We also have an ops team that helps us on energy and waste. But if you have questions for the folks on my team, or if I get a tough question, I'm going to kick it out to them. Certainly ask them while they're here. They're doing a great job, and I think we're all excited about the progress. We also all recognize we have a lot of work to do. These are hard issues. We've made progress, but there's a lot more to do. And I would say it's humbling to be here on Earth Day talking about this with you. So I think for all of us, that's an exciting day, and for all of us, a challenge in terms of what are we doing together to continue to advance. And we see TSC as a big part of the future for us to continue to drive change. Thanks. Okay, great.
I don't know if the mic is on, but we've got a couple of minutes for questions for Laura. Does anyone have anything they want to ask about what she's just talked about, or anything else? Yeah? Do we have mics?
Hi, Tom Battles with BASF. I'm just wondering how the e-commerce and sustainability leaders award program is going to see noticeable influence on consumer purchasing behavior, and what is the plan to bring that program to the store level purchasing orders?
Yeah, so our Sustainability Leaders program we rolled out last year, and really was an idea to kind of curate products that have the highest sustainability scores that are coming through the index, or categories and suppliers rather. And so it's really kind of, I would say, our generation 1.0 of that work. I think we're learning kind of what's working and areas where we can really improve in that area. We know that customers are demanding more and more transparency, and we see our digital assets as a way to connect with them online, on mobile. So we'll continue to work on that and continuing to offer kind of new ideas, new ways to engage with product information, whether that's online or at shelf or perhaps on mobile with our stores. So I'd tell you, work in progress. We're encouraged. We've learned a lot, and we know we have more to do to kind of connect that information better with customers.
Great, thank you. Time for one more? Okay, great. We'll
Good.
keep thinking.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank
and
you.
can I ask our panelists to join us on the stage as well, please? So if we could please welcome Tim Carey from PepsiCo, Rob Anson from Henkel, and Suzanne Lindsay-Walker from Kroger. Great. So we're going to spend a few minutes just building on some of those themes that Laura talked us through. And Suzanne, maybe I'll come to you first and ask you to tell us a little bit about why measuring progress on sustainability is important for you as an organization, and so what are the main activities involving TSC and beyond TSC that you're taking on right now?
Is this on? Can you hear me? Good morning. Hi. Happy to be here. So we all know what gets measured gets managed, and our customers are telling us more and more that they're demanding transparency, just like Laura said, and increasing not only transparency, but also the performance aspects of that. And so one of the key ways that we're doing that really are to set out some of our own goals, and you'll see a lot of themes with I think many retailers are headed. We do have a goal to be a zero waste company. We do have some goals around energy efficiency as well as renewable energy, building toward those over the next 10 years. And also doing that in a transparent way that can drive performance. So leveraging science-based targets in order to do that. And to do science-based targets, you need a baseline, you need solid metrics in order to do that. And so we're looking at ways, likely the 3% solution, things like that. Relative to zero waste, we'd like to be a zero waste company by 2020, and with a focus on food waste particularly. We see food waste as an absolute opportunity from a triple bottom line perspective. We can reduce costs, we can reduce environmental impacts, and we can drive cost efficiencies into our supply chain by focusing on food. Makes a whole lot of sense for a manufacturer and a retailer of food. We're also looking at ways, particularly around high-impact commodities. And, if we look at the last 5 or 10 years, we've had particular focus on several commodities, and if I'm completely honest, it was driven out of somewhat duress. Other people are bringing certain commodities to our attention, and now we're trying to shift that focus on what matters and what's most material to Kroger as a business, and to identify what those high-impact commodities are that we should tackle over the next 5 to 10 years. And one of the tools that I'm actually really excited about is leveraging the commodity mapping tool from the TSC. This was, I think we all struggle with trying to take this really, really complex supply chain and make it accessible for our sourcing teams. And our global sourcing team has absolutely embraced the commodity mapping tool. And I wanted to say thank you to Christy Slay and her team for helping us walk through that. It's an absolute joy to see the things that you have chipped away at with buyers over time, and when you see the light bulb come on, and when you see the types of, the information that's coming out of this exercise, that they can leverage and make better, thoughtful, strategic decisions so that we're, planning ahead. How are we using this information in a way that can drive that transparency and the performance into the supply chain? We also did a smaller test last year with paper and pulp, and it was, again, an area, excuse me, that had a bit of a controversy in our supply chain, and we wanted to gut check our suppliers and see where they stood relative to 6 key KPIs that we identified. And as a result of that work, we were able to see where several suppliers fell, and we're able to arm our buyers again with information that they can make more thoughtful and better decisions for our business.
Great, thank you. I'd like to think about this a bit from the supplier, brand manufacturer perspective. So maybe I'll come to Rob and then Tim to talk a bit about why is it so important to have merchants and sales teams talking together about this rather than it just being a sustainability to sustainability person conversation. Rob, please.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay.
Yep.
So as you could see in our TSC impact report yesterday, the production and the use of consumer goods accounts for 60% of greenhouse gas, 80% of water, and 2/3 of forest loss globally. So it's important that procurement professionals and merchants understand their role in the industry and the power that they have to work with suppliers and their suppliers to build a more sustainable future.
Good. Thanks, Tim.
Short answer.
Hey, thank you for the opportunity. I'm a sustainability professional, which means one of two things. Either my financial advisor in college was a visionary or they gave me very bad advice. But the amazing thing was merchants that ask are actually my biggest ally. And for the longest time, nobody asked. And so I keep telling my business, we got to do these things. They're the right things to do. They make economic sense. And customers and consumers will eventually care. And for years and years, I was wrong. Finally, really with Walmart, they proved me right. Someone cared. And it really got the business's attention. It made everything I did much, much easier because someone with a real financial interest in our success and their own success was actually asking.
Great, thank you. I think over the last couple of months in our work with Kroger, we've seen Suzanne make a huge breakthrough in really taking the engagement with your buyers to the next level. I know you've been excited about that, and we're really excited about that too. It'd be great to hear a little bit more about that and maybe why it was hard and what it took to knock through the walls there to make those conversations happen.
So, their entire being is to sell, and gross margin is king, and those are the metrics they're driving. And so until you're able to articulate a way that shows that there are social and environmental metrics that make sense that also have business impact, which is what we've been trying to do over time. And by simply taking them through an example with an existing supplier set, we were able to show them what more information and what it means to have social and environmental metrics associated with that. So it was it has been a long labor of love to get our buyers, what is the saying? That simplicity is complexity resolved, and that is exactly what the TSE is doing. It has taken a while for us to be able to engage in a way that is effective and immediate. And what I mean by that is the buyers in our global sourcing team seeing the value when you do have these other sets of data that sometimes, I think, sort of in a legacy perspective, have been somewhat squishy. And today that there are some actual real KPIs that can be measured over time to show transparency and performance in our supply chain, and that is absolutely critical for us. So when they see more and more, particularly we draw from global communities. We are an entirely domestic company, but have an impact tremendously across the globe. And to sort of show that in a way that is hard data was huge, huge. And to be able to articulate the different metrics and the ways that we can gain even more information by leveraging the commodity mapping tool and some of the supplier, the KPIs, was an absolute breakthrough for us, and particularly when you start to see more and more of our stakeholders asking more and more questions. So it's not only, just the customers that are asking, but it's our activist investors groups. We have never had more shareholder resolutions related to sustainability than in the last 5 years. So people are paying much more attention. Our board is paying much more attention and asking thoughtful questions. NGOs, everyone, there's so many people that are asking questions about this, and we need to have a very thoughtful, science-based way to articulate it. And that is exactly, part of the work that TSE is helping us to do.
Great, thank you. I'm going to open it up to you all in a second for your questions, but let me ask my final question to Rob and Tim. And that's, what are you guys doing to prepare your organizations for those questions that we know are coming from your retail customers? And what do you expect to be able to do to help your retailers make a success of this in their business?
So at Henkel, we have a training and certification process called Say Yes to the Future. We train all of our employees around the world and our sales staff and make them sustainability ambassadors. And what we do is we get together with our sustainability ambassadors and our leadership at sustainability with customers like Kroger and Walmart to build a sustainability partnership. We also use the Sustainability Index powered by TSE to identify opportunities for improvement across the value chain and then deliver high quality value goods for our consumers.
That's a great question, and obviously we're a small team in the sustainability world at PepsiCo, and in some respects we didn't have to do too much. When the customer asked, we got pull, and so I didn't have to prepare an elaborate slide deck or convincing business case for why we needed to do something, at least with people who weren't doing much to improve the sustainability footprint of the company. I just had to wait for the customer to ask, and when that happened, it just pulled through the organization very quickly. They said, my God, what are we doing? How can we help? How can we participate? And it was remarkable. And so it made my job very easy, but we did have to sow the seeds. We had to have public goals. We had to show how what Walmart or what Kroger were asking was actually connected to our public goals and was very consistent with our business strategy, was very consistent with our financial strategy. And when they saw this is really our business strategy, this is everything we're trying to do, it made my slide presentation 2 pages. It was very, very simple at that point.
Great, thank you. So I want to open it up for your questions. Please at the front. I see we've got a mic in the middle of the... I was smiling as I was looking at that, thinking, I'd like to think that that's a tribute to Prince, but we're not expecting you to sing. Great, please.
Yeah. Now, my question has to do with. I mean, these are great discussions and goals. When it comes to reducing packaging, right? So I work for Johnson & Johnson, and you mentioned, Laura mentioned in her talk about marketers, and marketers want to market their products, and shelf space is really important, and the way that the package looks. It's a barrier to sustainability, really, when it comes to reducing package size. So I was wondering, have retailers considered setting standards for the amount of product to package, or even setting objectives to remove outer packaging where it's really not necessary for certain categories of products? I think that can make, if you set those type of standards, it could have tremendous effect across the supply chain.
Great, thank you.
I'll take that. I think that's exactly right. And I think the word that we use is optimize. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're driving sustainability through the lens of the business and through the lens of the environment. And so we agree packaging serves an incredibly important role in our stores. We have a lot of products in our stores, and the packaging is really at that point of shelf, what helps to close the deal. We also know that packaging for us helps us in terms of having retail-ready displays and helps us reduce labor costs. So packaging plays a very, very important role in the selling of the product, and we want to make sure that we continue to acknowledge that, as well as protecting the product. So things like food waste or damages or returns, packaging plays a big role in that, and so all of those things are important. So this is nuanced, right? It's not as easy as just saying, oh, well, reduce every package. That's not the answer, because if you did that, you might sub-optimize one of those first three areas. So I think for all of us, it's just the challenge of kind of making sure we're using the right materials in our packaging, challenging that, looking at really optimization, thinking about recycling of our packaging. We're working on packaging standards right now that will kind of help to clarify this with our supply chain. But we believe this, we look at our KPIs and we look at the data in our heat map, and there's a couple of things that are consistent across every category at Walmart. Packaging is a big one, it's a big opportunity. We have more to do, and we also recognize it's hard because there's some of the challenges. But I would tell you, I personally worked with Lego in terms of testing packaging sizing. We worked with them for many years to really understand the implications of package reduction, to really see what we could learn from it. And at the end of that, with a lot of data, we're able to make changes together across the supply chain on packaging that's been good for the business, but also reducing the footprint. It also added more SKUs to the shelf.
Optimization is key. That's exactly right. It's, how do you not only consider all of the things that you talked about, it's also, how do we extend shelf life? How do we do, make sure there's food safety, make sure that the package is fit for purpose? And so it's integrating other metrics so that they're at least considered as a part of it. And so optimization is absolutely key. The other part of it too is we're working on goals right now, a packaging optimization goal that will be split into several different ways of looking at it, from first the materials that we're sourcing. So are they responsible sourcing materials? Are we looking at recyclability? How do we make sure that we're following FTC guidelines when we're making claims on pack? How do we then also, as a large business, help to participate and expand in the infrastructure of the recyclability of the packaging that we're putting on shelves, particularly related to our corporate branded products?
Great, thank you.
I know that was a retailer question, but I just want to say, working with Walmart over the last 8 years, one of the first thing we started to look at was package reduction as an index, and then we moved into ingredients, if I remember correctly. So as a supplier, we feel very, very responsible to look at packaging as a way to reduce our footprint and help our suppliers as well. So.
Great, thanks. And could I maybe ask one of my colleagues to grab the mic and save people running around? I think Harriet has a question.
Obviously, cooperation between the retailers and the merchants is key, but that can't happen until the conversations take place first. And Walmart is asking, and we see the power of that. Kroger is asking. What are your ideas for jump-starting those conversations? Because when we talk to manufacturers or retailers about what conversations they're having, they say, well, it never comes up in the top-to-top meetings. It never comes up when our salespeople go. We want it to. Part of it is training on both sides. Wonder what your thoughts would be on how we can really generate some robust conversations between retailers and manufacturers.
Thanks. Who'd like to take that?
I would like to go back to what I mentioned earlier about Henkel's Say Yes to the Future corporate strategy. By establishing a corporate strategy and funneling that throughout your sales organization and holding them accountable to meet with their retailers, our company set goals for us. For instance, we were to have 5 top-to-top meetings last year with key retailers and report that back. And this was a global initiative. So we've done that. And to your point, we've had a lot of challenges too. Not every retailer is focusing on sustainability and the effects that it can have on the business. So I applaud you for asking that question. It's an important one, but I encourage you to develop a strategy that you can funnel out to your organization and continually push to drive.
Anyone else want to add anything? Okay, good. I think we've got time for maybe one more. Yes, please, right at the back, Chris. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about what you're doing to reduce food waste?
That was easy.
I would love to take that one.
Great.
It's kind of silly, but I call food waste the gateway drug to sustainability because it really does have so many implications on our business. The numbers are just astounding. And when we pride ourselves on being an efficient business, and then you look at shrink and food waste, and it's ridiculous. So there's a ton of business value that can be driven out of the reduction of food waste, and we're looking at it, in a systems perspective. So not only, are we trying to clean up our own business with relative to the manufacturing side of it, but also what are we doing at the retail level? Food is intended to feed people, and we should be feeding people. And so, we're a business, we want to sell food, but if we can't, we donate it. 100% of our 2,700 stores participate in perishable donation partnerships. 1,100 stores now have either an animal feed or composting program. If you're out in California, 370 of our stores are backhauling to an anaerobic digester in Compton, California. We're co-located with the distribution center, a main dairy processing plant. So the effluent from the dairy processing plant is going into the AD. We're generating, 3.5 million kilowatt hours of renewable energy via our own food waste. So we're leveraging different technologies where it makes sense regionally, but then also trying to drive innovation both up and down the supply chain. And the key, not only to do it within our own business, is how do you enable customer sustainability? And so how do we look at packaging solutions? How do we look at ways that they can stretch their dollar? How do we make sure that they're, storing food appropriately? And one of the things I'm really excited about is, we're not going to be able to build, 2 million gallon ADs everywhere in the United States, but we've recently have an MOU with the Innovation Center for U.S. Dairy, and so AD is not new for farmers, so how do we strategically collaborate with them to determine where could we put ADs, or dairy-based ADs, to help process Kroger food waste. So looking at what that looks like, feasibility study is ongoing, so there is a tremendous amount of work that is going on up and down Kroger's supply chain that I'm really excited to show some real reductions in food waste and shrink.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Anyone else like to follow that?
Hey, food waste is the opportunity. It's the big thing that will really drive financial value for everyone in the system. If I had a manufacturing process that had a 5% failure rate, I would have teams of Six Sigma people working on that process. And it's like, and yet in food waste, which is clearly much bigger than 5%, it's like I have nobody. And part of it is because it requires enormous collaboration. It's about your quality standards. It's about how you transport things from market. It's about your sell-by date. It's about all of these things that everyone has a role in. And so to solve it, we need to do something like partnerships we have with Walmart on agriculture, where you're focusing as a full value chain on everyone's role working together. So tremendous opportunity to improve sustainability, food availability, profitability, all of those things. We just have to do it collaboratively.
Thank you.
Yep. I'd say the only other thing is we're also bringing the customer into it, and I think we're seeing some innovative ideas where customers are starting to catch on to this challenge of food waste as well. So in our stores, we are leveraging a program where we're starting to kind of sell products, at a reduced price. Maybe it's a bakery item or meat, at a reduced price to kind of make sure before we throw it away, to make sure that we give customers that value while we still can sell it. And then in the UK, they've piloted a program they call the wonky vegetable, and they're selling that to customers and seeing great response from that, as well as they're providing education for customers in their homes, different kind of tools and ideas for what they can do in their homes. So I think the customer, this is a great way to engage the customer into the agenda as well. And I think as you've heard all of us talk, this is one of those kind of next defining issues in sustainability. And I think this is a great one for us all to kind of take on and really drive great impact together.
Thank you. I should confess that I'm one of the weird people in the UK that actually searches through for the wonky-looking vegetables with the expectation that no one else will buy them. But I think I'm probably not typical of the UK shopper in that respect. We'll draw this to a close now because time's moving on, but I'd like you to thank our 4 panelists for a great set of responses and for the leadership they're showing. Thank you. So I'm going to ask Sheila back to the stage. She's going to tell us a bit about how some of the insights from the impact report have shaped the agenda for the planning sessions and breakouts we've got the rest of today.
How many of you had a chance to read the report last night? All of you. I'm going to give you some highlights, so if you've read it, sorry if I'm repeating. Okay. Great. So, hello, there we are. So I'm going to give you a little more in depth than we did yesterday of what's in the report, and all of you should have the actual physical report from yesterday. Of course, we will have it online as well. So if you don't have it and don't have access, let us know. We want to make sure you do. I think we'll probably send something out to all of our members and to our reading list to, go and download the report. So we're very excited about it. We had a great launch yesterday, a good launch event. I want to give you just a little bit more flavor of what's in the report as it relates to the sessions today. So today's sessions, one of the things that we wanted to do as we think of TSC shifting from kind of the Make Metrics organization to the Have Impact organization, is to take our data and look at what it says, look at how we're doing on the various hotspots and the KPIs, and then try to say, what should we be doing to address where we're not doing so well? And the sessions today will be starting out looking at the data across different topics or different categories. So I'll give a little highlight of some of those, but you have on the program what the different sessions are, and you'll get a chance. Each session will be run twice, so you get a chance to go and pick one the first time, and then you can then pick a different one the second time. So to get into it, our report starts out, and I think it's important, it starts out by just highlighting the benefits of consumer goods. I think as we talk about the impact and the sustainability price tag of consumer goods, we can't lose sight of why these goods are here and how fantastic and what kind of benefits they bring. But it's also, and this is in the report, so I don't need to read it, but it's just some of the factoids that make you kind of stop and realize, the things like Jonathan Atwood talked about, hand soap that stops, childhood mortality before kids are 5, because in many parts of the world that's real. And we think about some of the other things like air conditioning and packaging. I think we were just talking about food waste. Packaging plays a huge role in reducing food waste. So I think it's really important to start out thinking that these benefits that come from from goods are really important. And as more and more people enter the consuming class, expected over the next several decades that we're going to have 2.5 billion more people enter the consuming class. And we can't say, no, you can't have hand soap, or no, you can't have packaging. So we need to solve this problem because we want everyone to be able to have a good lifestyle. So that's kind of the context we set it in, and then we bring up the point, and thank you to Rob for already citing some of the factoids from the report, but the size of that impact, the price tag that these benefits come with, is really very large. So over 60% of greenhouse gas emissions globally, more than 2/3 of deforestation, more than 80% of water, and most of forced and child labor is also embedded in consumer goods supply chains, not counting waste and wastewater and a whole slew of other impacts that we track with our KPIs. So if we take these benefits and we see that we're going to have 2.5 billion more people entering the consuming class, these numbers are going to rise. And it's just beyond what our planet can hold. And there's impacts on people too. So that's really the challenge and why we need to do this. In the report, we also point out, and I think the panel was great, both Laura and Suzanne talked about some of the business benefits of doing this. They're real business benefits too. And I think that's important as we push forward with this context, because we can't really push forward if it's all a huge cost. So these are some of the context that we lay out in the beginning of the report. And then we get into, well, here we are. What is the state of sustainability? We know kind of this big picture of what the impacts are. Where are we? Well, I think the important thing to understand about the state of consumer goods is where the impacts lie. And we looked at a number of sources, and then we looked at our own KPIs. But what you see across the board is that most of the impacts are not with the manufacturer, but they're going to be upstream in the supply chain, or they're going to be downstream in consumer use. And in fact, the bulk is upstream in the supply chain. So I think CDP estimates that something like 80% of the carbon impacts are Scope 3, they're upstream. There was a report by GreenBiz looking at the natural capital impacts, 90% are upstream. And there's other analyses as well. And our KPIs, similarly, we have a significant number of the hotspots are upstream. So given that, this is really part of why the consortium came up with the system that we've come up with, which is a system that, and we heard Suzanne and Laura and the others speak about what TSC has done, and I loved, and now I'll forget what it was, but simplicity is complexity solved. I love that idea, but that is really what TSC has spent the last 6 years doing, which is trying to take all of that, turn it into a tool that we can take action on, and we can start to actually drive change, because we've created a signal that can be sent from a retailer through to their suppliers to drive sustainability all the way down the supply chain to the factory or the farm where the impacts are happening. And I loved also hearing Tim say that, when the customer asks, when your supplier asks, it becomes easy. That's the demand signal, right? That's what we need to have happen at every level in the supply chain in order to address these impacts that are way back at the beginning stages of the supply chain. So we built this system. We now actually have some data. We have retailers using the system. We've got over $100 billion of trade going over the system. What do we see? This gives you an idea, a summary, a heat map of some of the scores across different categories. We've grouped them together because obviously there's a lot more categories, and some of the impact areas. And I think you'll see there's all the areas that are red. To me, those represent big opportunities. And particularly where you see red in the areas like climate and energy, where there's often so much cost savings. This starts to look like a really good business proposition. Some of the areas that are green we're doing better on, but truthfully across the board, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of opportunity there. In the report, we then also look at a few of the topic areas, and these are some of the things that we'll be discussing today. We'll be having sessions on deforestation, for example, and we look at what some of the data says. How do we see deforestation across different categories, and how is it different? And looking at where we are, and we also look at kind of where does that compare to kind of where some of the commitments are out there. So we have quite a discussion on deforestation. So I encourage you to go to one of the sessions today to talk about deforestation. I think World Wildlife Fund is going to be joining us and talking about some of their views on deforestation as well, so that should be good. Several folks today just talked about packaging. Packaging, we see it across many, many of our categories. Not every category, but probably more than any other issue we see packaging. Maybe I got that wrong. Maybe energy comes across as frequently. We see, this is some data on the different types of materials being used, and it's very different across different categories. And again, there'll be a discussion today around packaging. We can talk about why in different categories are we using different materials, what are the pros and cons, how do we move forward and get the impact on packaging to be better, since this is a real opportunity. Usually reducing packaging reduces cost. And another area that is an opportunity, because there's usually cost savings to be had, looking at resources and in particular energy. One of the things that this shows is two things, that a lot of the biggest impacts are further back in the supply chain. Often those are the ones where we have very low visibility. Visibility is a theme across the board. I think I mentioned yesterday when I presented a very high highlight that in general, one of the biggest issues I think that we need to work on, and really what should be a lot of the work over the next year, is how can we help suppliers get better visibility of their supply chains? Because across the board where we're asking, do you have insight into, do you know, the carbon, in your supply chain, or do you know about the water in your supply chain? Whenever we're asking these questions, more than half of the responses to those KPIs are, I don't know. And we need to get that changed. We need to be able to start enabling visibility and have companies be able to understand. Because today, all of those are blind spots. That's the part in the title of the report about blind spots. They don't know what's going on. And that's a big risk for the supplier. It's a risk for the retailer. And we need to start to make action on that. But these are some of the areas where we can start to take action, and there's also a real positive business benefit from doing so if we can save money. Again, there'll be some sessions on resources today as well. I'm going to sum up because I think we're running a bit late today, and I know we want to get to the sessions and make sure we have time for our networking breaks. But I want to end where the report ends, which is really this call to action. It's so exciting to see Walmart, to see Kroger, using our tools, working with their suppliers, working with their buyers. What I'd like to see is more retailers taking that responsibility and taking responsibility for their supply chains, using tools to be able to drive the change across the life cycle of the products that they put on their shelves. So one of our points of call to action is to say, let's get more retailers in this, and let's get them using these tools. And the other is what I just mentioned, this issue of visibility. Let's get suppliers to work on their visibility. I was excited on Wednesday, I think Tim was saying his realization that he can use these tools with his suppliers to drive the same kind of accountability that a retailer can do, and he can get visibility with his suppliers in that way. So we want to see more of that in this year. And then there's a big role for those of us in the nonprofit community, for the NGOs, and for those of us who are in organizations like the consortium, where we need to support this. We need to work together. We need to make it easier for the retailers, for their suppliers, to pick up this agenda. We need to harmonize and work together and make that a smooth interaction so that we can drive the change we want. So the other thing that we say at the end, and I think yesterday when we were at the panel, I loved when we said, where are we going to be in 5 years? And we would really like to see $1 trillion of retail trade working with us, driving the kind of change that Walmart, that Kroger are doing in their supply chains. It's a reasonable number. It's less than 10 of the top largest retailers in the world. Now, probably that's not all of those are going to be accessible to us, but there's more than 10 retailers in the world. And the magnitude of that impact is actually pretty big. There's only about $14 trillion of retail trade. If we can make impact on $1 trillion, we can actually really, really make some big change in the world. So I hope that all of you will work with us to make these things happen, to pick up our own responsibility for working together for the collective action that's going to drive the change we need. I'll wrap it up here and wish you a very good rest of the day today. Thank you all for coming, and I'll look forward to seeing you in the sessions this afternoon.
Okay, so we're going to close in a second, and we'll have a quick networking break before the first of our breakout sessions starts at 11 o'clock. As Sheila said, as you look at the agenda, there's a couple of different breakouts, and so feel free to move between those. You don't need to go to the same one twice. There might be a bit of repetition, so jump around and explore as many different things as you can. And the impact report really has fed the agenda for this. The way I think about what we've done with the report, it's not an end in itself. It's not a write-up of what we've done. It's an information resource and hopefully also a source of inspiration for us all to think about where we go next, to think about which issues we collectively want to work on together, and where the whole that we make can be greater than the sum of the parts. So please come at this with that mindset. Come to these sessions thinking about how we can use what we know to shape the projects that we're going to do next in each of our different business areas. I want to close with just a quick vote of thanks. There's a huge amount of work to be done by us all over the rest of the day, but this is the last time we'll be together as a group in this room. So I thought it would be appropriate just to say a couple of thank yous. Of course, inevitably, most of the people that you want to thank aren't in the room to hear it. They're outside doing the stuff that you want to thank them for. So hopefully you can pass that on as well. But I'd just like to call out the team, and it's been a pretty big team across TSC that's brought this summit together. So to call out a few names: Sarah, Erica, Jessica, Mike, Debbie, Carolyn, Christy, Ali, and many others behind the scenes that have made this a success. I want to make specific mention of Jada. I don't think she's in the room, and I know she'd be mortified that I'm doing this, so it's maybe better she's not in the room, but about 3 weeks ago, the impact report was sitting in Word with a whole host of placeholders and gaps and questions and boxes that say, where's the data to support this? And in 3 weeks, she's taken that horrible looking mess and turned it into an absolutely fantastic document, and huge credit there for her and the team she's worked with. And I'd like to, thank you. I'd also like to thank all of our speakers, the TSC staff, the members who've spoken, and our invited guests who've spoken too. So we'd like to give them a round of applause as well, please. And lastly, to all of our attendees, some have travelled far, those that are DC based less so, but wonderful to have you all here. Because really this is an event about you and what we can all do together to drive this incredibly important agenda forward. So thanks for joining us. I hope you have lots of energy for the rest of the day, and coffee's being served outside again if you need a bit of help. So thank you.